Hi, this is Steve Scott, the Houston Business Coach, and thank you for joining me. And today's short coaching session is going to be on how to go about doing self-improvement. Now, there literally are hundreds of things you can do to improve yourself, but I just want to focus on a couple of things. When I was growing up, in my room, my parents had a sign that said, some people make it happen, some people watch it happen, and others go, well, what happened? And it always impressed upon me how important it was to do the right thing. But you first have to start in your mind conceiving of what that right thing is. And believe it or not, you do have the power of choice. It was back in what is today the Middle East. Hundreds of years ago, there was a wise man in the middle of the desert. And people would come from up to 100 miles around to seek out his wisdom. One day, a little boy showed up, and the wise man was so excited because he never had anybody so young. But he didn't know that the little boy was there to trick him. And he said to the little boy, "What can I do for you? What can I do for you?" And the little boy said, "Wise man, I have a dove in my hands, and I'm going to close my hands over the dove. And before I open them, I want you to tell me whether the dove will be dead or alive." The wise man replied, "It will be as you wish." So, one of the first steps to self-improvement is to understand it will be as you wish. Now, how do we go about doing that? The first step is your mind has to be in the right place. So it was many, many years ago, and I read this somewhere, that there was a survey done of almost 100,000 people in the United States. And the researchers wanted to determine what percentage of the population were positive thinkers. Now, a positive thinker is someone who has a thought and takes the action to complete it, or decides to develop new skills and disciplines to make it happen. So interestingly, out of 100,000 people, 90,000 people in the first part of the survey identified themselves as positive thinkers. But when the researchers went further down in the survey, they discovered that in reality, 90% of that 90,000, almost 81,000 people, were not positive thinkers. They were positive wishers. And positive wishing really is the formula for not much is happening around here. So here's what I want to ask you. For self-improvement, first of all, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for fewer problems, wish for more skills. And don't wish for less challenges, wish for more wisdom. Now, once you have your wishes in order, then you have to make a decision. You either modify your dreams or magnify your skills. And if you really want to move forward, you have to magnify your skills. Otherwise, things are going to stay the same. So, let's say if we went outside and our only tool was a hammer and we wanted to cut down a tree, it might take 30 days. But what if we trade that hammer for an axe? We can turn 30 days into 30 minutes. What's the difference? It's skills. So you have a choice. You have to think positively and develop the skills or take the action to make something happen. The key really in business and life is to become skillful enough at enough things for life to really be rewarding. So always look to magnify your skills. It's important to start with the positive wishes. Don't get me wrong, you absolutely have to start there. But turn those positive wishes into positive thinking, and you will find some great things start happening in your life. Now here's the second thing. So we got the positive thinking going. We have our positive wishes. We've turned it into positive thinking. We're going to develop some new skills and disciplines, or we're going to take action on some things we've put off, and that's great. But here's how we can sabotage ourselves. The second thing to self-improvement is don't be a complainer. Complaining. There's room for legitimate complaining. There are things that do go wrong, and we certainly need to complain about them, or they'll never get taken care of. But when we're always complaining about, oh, this person or that situation, and we say the problem is out there, that's the problem when we think the problem is out there. So complaining, if you let this deadly disease of attitude loose, it will take over your life and conquer you. Complaining will leave you without anything in terms of relationships and even your bank account. If you think about it, nobody wants to take a complainer along. Nobody wants to partner with one. Nobody wants to live with one. And here's the big thing. Because life is an interdependent reality. We depend on other people. Nobody wants to promote one. So You complain long enough, and it will leave you out of more opportunities in business and life than you ever imagined if you let this go ahead and grab you by the throat. Now, if you don't think complaining is bad enough, just ask the children of Israel of Old Testament fame. They're really like the rest of us, except their story just happened to get in the book. If you remember, God, through an incredible series of miracles, delivered them out of slavery in Egypt. He parted the Red Sea. Then they moved on in the Sinai Desert toward the Promised Land. Here's the sad part of the story. They never made it. Most of them never made it. How come? From day one, they started complaining. They complained about the water in the desert. They had plenty of water in the desert, but you know, it didn't taste the same as what they were used to in slavery. They complained about the food. They had plenty of food. They whined about the leadership that had just delivered them from slavery. In fact, it was too rocky. It was too hard. It was too difficult. It was too hot. It was too cold. And they complained for years, 40 to be exact. You know what God finally said? I've had enough. Trip canceled. I think we can learn two things from this. First of all, if you complain long enough, your future will be canceled. Future opportunities, and here's the key thing, future promotions, and even more key, future healthy relationships, because you cannot have healthy relationships if you're a complainer. Here's the second thing. Even God himself can take so much complaining. So what do you do for self-improvement when you're in a predicament? A predicament is a problem that has some extended time to it. It's not something that can be immediately solved. You look for the opportunities within the difficulties. You look for the opportunities to become better. You look for the opportunities how you can add value. That's very, very important. And you focus on what you can control, which is your behavior and your ability to develop skills, disciplines, and to keep your thinking positive. You focus on what you can control, not what you cannot. So we put all these things together. You want to have positive thinking. That is one of the absolute cornerstones to self-improvement. And the second thing is absolutely minimize your complaining. The thing is, the difference between failure and success as we move along is really just as fine as a razor's edge. And I'll close with this thought here. It was back in 1947. Here in the United States, there was a racehorse named Armed. And Armed in 1947 went over $1 million in career winnings, which back in 1947 was huge. And in that year, he won almost $750,000 to push him over the $1 million mark. That year, his nearest competitor earned around $65,000. So was Armed 10 or 11 times better than his nearest competitor? And the answer is no, he wasn't. When you looked at the times, he was 1 or 2 tenths of a second faster. So here's the point. Go out. If you improve your life or business by 1% a day, that would be 365% a year. But let's say you just improve it by 1% a week. That's 52%. Or let's say 1% a month. That's 12%. But the thing is, you have to start with positive thinking, which is taking the action. And when you take the action, you will make it happen. This is Steve Scott, the Houston Business Coach, and thank you for joining me on this coaching session on self-improvement.